name is Ebony Treadwell, and today I'll be doing a speech on morbid obesity. So the first thing that I want to say is that morbid obesity, there are over 300 million people who are considered obese throughout the world. And in America alone, there are 15 million people who are morbidly obese. And in this speech, I'm actually going to be talking about the causes and the treatments of morbid obesity. Okay, so first, I want to start off by defining morbid obesity. Morbid obesity is being 100 or more pounds over one's healthy weight limit, or having a body mass index or a BMI of 40 or greater. And actually here, that considered super morbidly obese, not just morbidly obese. He's considered super morbidly obese because he's 50 pounds, or he has a BMI of 50, and that means that half of his body. Also, I have a shirt that is typical of someone who is morbidly obese. It's XL. And excess weight of morbid obesity triggers a number of life-threatening illnesses, including congestive heart failure, diabetes, cancers, kidney failure, and high blood pressure. And 300,000 people die from morbid obesity a year in the United States. According to the article Causes of Morbid Obesity, there are several different causes of morbid obesity, but the first one is caloric intake, and that's consuming more calories than one can actually burn. And then another cause is genetic factors, which an example of that is the thrifty gene hypothesis, which is basically saying that the gene that our ancestors used to use, the gene that our ancestors had a couple years ago during the time of famine is the same gene that we have right now when food is plentiful. So it's kind of actually like backtracking and making people bigger instead of helping them. A couple other factors are psychological factors, medical conditions, and eating disorders like binge eating or compulsive overeating. And both of those lead to the biggest cause of morbid obesity, which is fast food addiction. And fast food addiction, according to Fast Food Addiction, Obesity, and the Weight Loss Issues article, is the number one cause of morbid obesity. And in the U.S., over 18 million people suffer from food addiction. Food addiction is actually the hardest to resolve out of all the causes of morbid obesity, and that's because food, like drugs and alcohol, can also trigger the dopamine receptor, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain that's associated with pleasure and reward, and it also implores the want for more food. And if that's impaired, it can cause you to be more vulnerable to compulsive overeating, or and which also causes you to be more vulnerable to food addiction. And though that can trigger, the impairment can trigger food addiction, it can also be triggered by certain food additives. There's also treatment for food addiction, but moreover, there are treatments for morbid obesity, which is mainly treated by weight loss surgery, and that's the number one option, and sometimes it's the only option. Like for him, it would be his only option, because he wouldn't be able to fit weight by just exercise. And many times the doctor recommends you undergoing counseling before you have the surgery, as well as, lose as much weight as possible before actually having the surgery. Now, one may ask, well, what are the different types of surgeries that you can take? And there are several, but the most common are the VBG, which is the vertical banded gastroplasty, and that's where the staples divide the stomach into two parts. There's also the RGB, which is, you guys probably have heard of it before, which is the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, and that's when they take a part of your stomach off and just leave a small pouch. And another one is the lap band, which they advertise on TV all the time, and that's the laparoscopic gastric banding, and it's an inflatable band around the upper part of the stomach, and it creates a narrower passage, so you can't consume as much food as you normally would be able to. And I feel like with all these different options, and through controlled exercise and diet, there's really no reason why people should suffer from morbid obesity, especially in the U.S. when there's so many available options to prevent it. But what's ironic about that is that the U.S. is number 9 on Forbes list for the world's fattest country, and number one and it's the number one in the world leading nations. Also, Texas, although it's the second biggest state in the United States, is actually holds the largest amount of people. And by that I mean that 64% of the people in Texas, which is over half of their population, is overweight. And Texas also holds the world's largest, six of the world's largest people. And not to single the U.S. out because this is a rising world epidemic, but this disease claims lives of too many people unnecessarily. And I really encourage us to do as Gandhi says, which is be the change you want to see in the world. And attempt to do what's necessary for you and, to others, well, for us, not just you, but to, exercise and diet to prevent from even hitting the stage of morbid obesity. Even being overweight, you want to watch it because, you can go from 10 to 12 in a second. But do you guys have any questions?
I got a question.
Yes.
What causes the rash on his leg?
That's actually caused from bed sores. So sometimes with his legs being like that, he sweats a lot. And and so this right here is actually caused from the skin peeling. It's not actually a rash. That's from his skin peeling. Yes.
You spoke earlier about the different options of surgeries that you could actually take. Are any of those surgeries risky, like as far as having factors or cause it? Have they been known to cause like a danger to that person's life?
Well, like any surgery, it always has, the stipulation whether you can pass away from. But the heavier you are with this type of surgery, the more risky it is. And that's why I said, like, the doctors try to get you to diet and exercise more, so that way you can lose weight and get to healthy. Because at his weight, he's over 1,000 pounds. That's a very risky surgery, and he has, like, a very low chance of living through the surgery. So that what they would try to do is get his weight down as much as possible and then have the surgery. Some doctors won't even operate if you're over a certain amount of weight. And I think that's around 500. They try to get you below that before they actually do surgery.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
What would you say the percentage is at the
Well, now, at this point, I would probably say he probably had a 80% chance of living, 5 years, but he's actually lost a lot of weight. He's actually pounds now, so his probability of living is, yes.
Oh, okay.
His probability of living has definitely gone up.
Okay.
Is that it? Okay, thank you guys.
Ah.